Like any true Uncharted fan with money to burn, I recently tried purchasing the digital remaster of the original Uncharted trilogy. However, it took me a little while to find it online, which is strange, considering I was just searching for it under the usual AAA pre-order titles. You know the ones. You have your Definitive Deluxe Edition, the Triple Platinum Parcel Edition, the slightly better than average pre-order bonus edition featuring Victor Sullivan figurine, the Charlie Cutter Complete Card Carriers Club Plus collection complete with Donut Drake downloadable content for Uncharted 4, the super duper unlimited infinite Chintamani Stone Cold Steve Austin encrusted digital pre-order edition, now including the Eddie Raja's Revenge multiplayer raid and expansion pack, well, here's my problem. I was on the Ubisoft website the whole time. However, when I finally purchased the game, I was slightly surprised by its actual title. The Nathan Drake Collection? I mean, sure, he's the main character, but why name it all after him? Isn't 2 of the 4 games named after him enough? Well, the answer may surprise you. Welcome to the Month of Uncharted, where today I'll be discussing Uncharted 2, Among Thieves. Cue music. It's no secret that the Uncharted games are ostensibly about Nathan Drake. He's on all the cover art, he's the player character for all the games, and as we've just discussed, even the freaking remastered collection is named after him. This may at first seem like Naughty Dog's attempt to make a mascot of sorts, but believe it or not, their motivations may be a lot more complex than that. The most obvious reason is because he's the player character. This means that Nathan Drake is what connects the player to the world of Uncharted. The series is viewed through the eyes of Nathan Drake and is experienced primarily by Nathan Drake. In fact, the world of Uncharted more or less revolves around Nathan Drake. And while this can be a bit problematic at times, it's really more emblematic of the Uncharted series' main inspiration: pulp action novels. You see, back before TV was really a thing and Hollywood special effects still kinda sucked, pulp action serials, or pulp magazines, whatever you want to call them, were the equivalent to today's action movies. They were somewhat disposable escapist entertainment you could get for a nickel. They primarily focused on macho heroes in far-off places going on ridiculous adventures, usually punching Nazis or commies or something, and riding off into the sunset with the girl in the end. And while they were often cheesy, they offered some ridiculous creative freedom to their writers, primarily when it came to pulp horror and pulp science fiction, allowing revolutionaries like H.P. Lovecraft to flex their literary muscles. But that's a story for another day. These fun action romps of yesteryear are all but forgotten now, but their influence is still very much felt in the characters they inspired, most notably Indiana Jones, James Bond, and Nathan Drake. The developers at Naughty Dog looked to these pulp action serials for inspiration when they were creating the tone and world of these games. Why? The same reason your teenage grandpas read them: escapism. Escapism is a powerful drug. Unlike other mediums, such as film or magazines, who have to convey these high-octane explosion fests by having the audience passively watch them unfold, video games can cut out the middleman and have their audience actively participate in the mayhem happening on screen. It's essentially a power fantasy that's only bolstered by having the very world bend to your will. So, when Naughty Dog names the remasters the Nathan Drake Collection, it's really a wink and a nudge to the audience, saying, "See all this fun we're having with our old buddy Nate? We'll pull up a seat and you can join us." Why is this important? Because, my dear friend, many of Uncharted's best characters from here on out are actually twisted mirror images of Nathan Drake. Your 9th grade English teacher probably called these kinds of characters foils, but to put it bluntly, they're the reason why Batman villains are so good. They take one core attribute of the hero and kick it up to 11, bringing out a different side of the hero. And speaking of Batman, let's start out with Nathan Drake's own personal Riddler, Harry Flynn. Flynn and Uncharted 1's version of Nathan Drake are essentially the same character. Both are wisecracking treasure hunters and way over their head. They're essentially 2 sides of the same coin. But why do this? Wouldn't having two unfunny stock action heroes quip off each other endlessly be even more insufferable than just the one? Yes. Yes, it is. And that's exactly the point. Don't take my word for it, just look at the game's tutorial levels, a rock in a hard place, and breaking and entering. The game opens with Nate trying to get out of a train, with a bullet wound, while mercenaries are shooting at him. Oh yeah, and the train is falling off the cliff and it's in the Himalayas, don't ask. If that doesn't get your heart pumping, I'd be calling 911 right now because you don't have a pulse. Then, while all of this is happening, the game flashes back to how it all began, with Harry Flynn pulling Nate into a job he knows he shouldn't do. A job where you use a clunky tranquilizer gun that mimics the default sidearm of Uncharted 1, and try to use a stealth system that's as unforgiving as it is unrefined. All while Harry and Nate have a contest to see who can be the least funny. Spoiler alert, nobody wins and the audience loses. You see, what Naughty Dog is essentially doing is thrusting you into the worst level of the first Uncharted game and leading you along with cuts back to the train set piece like a carrot on a stick. Like I said, Flynn is Nate from the first game, so this means they can use Flynn as a yardstick to measure Nate's character development throughout the game. Is it manipulative? Kinda. Does it work? Heck yeah. Still don't believe me? Near the end of the game, Uncharted does the whole Road of Trials thing from Indiana Jones. This is where our swashbuckling hero is forced to do puzzles for the bad guy at gunpoint. Nate slogs through another clunky level with frustrating mechanics while Flynn makes quips. Only this time, no one's laughing. Nate's remarks back to Flynn have a biting edge and any cooperation is forced. They may be two sides of the same coin, but what separates them is intelligence. The tragedy of Harry is that he's too cocky and oblivious to realize that he and Nate are in the same boat. Harry may have a gun to Nate's back, but Harry forgets that Lazarevich has one pointed right at his. And by the time he realizes it, it's too late to make a difference. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is that Harry Flynn, the good villain that he is, challenges our hero and forces Nate to be a better person. But what about a character that makes Nate a worse person? Well, for that, we can look no further than the spectacular level Keep Moving. This is a masterclass in video game character writing, because the majority of the development is actually happening through the mechanics of the level. Nate and his gal pal Chloe Fraser exit an ancient temple with the next clue on their adventure. However, they discover that while they were in there, the big baddie, Lazarevich, and his men have ambushed Elena and her cameraman Jeff. You see Elena rolling with the punches, fighting off waves of mercenaries, while Jeff... he has a mean right hook, I'll give him that. For the next 10 minutes, you are forced to carry this bleeding, dying man through an active war zone, a task that's made only harder by Jeff's slow pace and the player's inability to use a sidearm. The entire time you have an angel and a devil on your shoulder in the form of Elena and Chloe, who are trying to clear the way in front of you. Each are trying to convince you that you either need to ditch Jeff and run or continue to help him. It's a powerful action sequence, however, I will admit it's only ever as strong as how much you care about a random NPC. Personally, the explosive spectacle and spectacular character depth sell it for me, but I can see why people may not be as attracted to John as I am. Naughty Dog does do a few things to try and triage this possible empathy problem. They have Jeff's first action be to selflessly try and disarm Nate, a man who, as far as he knows, is a bloodthirsty mercenary who is about to kill Elena. They also make it clear early on that Jeff is important to Elena, thus making Jeff important to the player by extension. And lastly, they make the action sequence fairly difficult, hoping to instill a sort of "don't you die on me" mentality through repetition of failure. This isn't even mentioning the little details in character animation, like how Jeff starts out the sequence limping alongside Nate but slows down throughout the fight until he's basically being dragged at the climax, causing Nate's breathing and line delivery to become more labored with the added weight, or how Elena keeps looking back from time to time to see how her friend is doing. Honestly, outside of making Jeff a dog or a child, there really isn't much more you can do to make the player any more empathetic. And while Naughty Dog would later do just that in The Last of Us, there's no denying that this set piece is a fantastic example of intertwining player motivation and character motivation. Eventually, the group stumbles into the side of a crumbling building. They're surrounded, low on ammo, and the only other way out is a 10-foot drop that Jeff has no chance of getting down, seeing as he's barely conscious. I mentioned earlier that Elena and Chloe during the action sequence serve as a sort of angel and devil. However, Naughty Dog continues this motif into the cutscene. Nathan Drake in the first game is a smug, unlikable jerk who kills people that get in his way and blows up ancient ruins to make things more convenient. Here, that version of Nathan Drake begins to erode away, and this begins when Chloe holds a gun to his head and tells him to leave Jeff for dead. Throughout the game, Nate expresses his attraction to Chloe, despite knowing how toxic a relationship would be. And why wouldn't he be attracted to Chloe? She's sexy, dangerous, and highly unpredictable. The perfect manifestation of his adrenaline-fueled, almost masochistic lifestyle. Nate's unflappable action hero facade falters as he is forced to view his own actions under a microscope. Chloe's threat is cut short when Flynn enters the room with a few guards. With a smirk, a few quips, and an audible groan from most of the audience, this bumbling henchman manages to disarm the group. And then you see Lazarevich, and all the oxygen is sucked out of the room. Earlier in the game, you see him killing his own henchman for stealing petty cash, but that's from like 200 feet away. Here, in this claustrophobic, crumbling room, his disfigured body looms like a darkness over the cast. Even Flynn falls silent as this mountain of a man enters. He sizes up Nathan Drake, and then shoots Jeff in the head. This not only shows that Lazarevich means business, but because the player has just worked so hard to save Johnny, his death carries weight. Lazarevich points a gun at Elena next. Nathan, thinking fast, tells Lazarevich that only he knows the way to the treasure. This is brilliant because it tricks the player into breathing easy, since it seems that Nate has just saved them all with the oldest treasure hunting cliche in the book. And then Flynn finds the map to the treasure in Nate's back pocket. Just like that, every card Nathan Drake has left is gone. Lazarevich has the map, all the guns, and now that Chloe's cover is blown, he has her too. This scene, and for that matter, the whole level, works because of its constant forward momentum. Every action builds upon the last, and each one drastically changes the direction of the scene. If Nathan Drake is a vehicle for the player's power fantasy, then this scene is about ripping that away from him piece by piece until only the once great Nathan Drake stands powerless to help his friends. They don't even have the player escape by some quick-witted plan on Nate's part. They give that pleasure to Elena. The two flee the scene, and once they're out of harm's way, they take some time to pay their respect to Jim or Dave or whatever his name was. Rest in peace, big guy. Wait, this guy has a Wikipedia page? Soon, Nate resolves that he's going to save Chloe. To Elena, this is madness, but to Nathan, the player, it makes perfect sense. Nate is the hero, and Chloe is the damsel in distress. This is a power fantasy, after all. Besides, if Chloe isn't worth saving, then Nate would have to consider that there's something wrong with the life he's living. In short, what Nate is truly wondering is whether there is honor among thieves. Hey, would you look at that? That's the title of the game. Huh. But what if the princess doesn't want to leave her castle? What if she's perfectly comfortable where she is and doesn't care how many Goombas you've killed on your way over here? Even here, Naughty Dog subverts themselves, and Nate is shot trying to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. We're forced to replay the opening set piece and watch as Nate passes out alone in the snow. Unfortunately, this is where Among Thieves kinda derails itself, both thematically and literally. While this scene between Chloe and Nate is superbly acted and asks some pretty interesting questions about Nate's need to play the hero, the writers never really make it clear what Chloe is staying for. Her performance seems to be conveying arrogance. I just wish they would have made her motivations a bit clearer in the game's third act. Like, if she believes that she can somehow outsmart Lazarevich and get the Chintamani stone for herself, then how come she gives Nate the final clue so easily? And when everything begins to go south, why is she the one telling Nate that they should just forget the treasure and leave? If she wanted the treasure for herself, why isn't she more pissed when Nate is literally just there to blow it up? If it's because she has, for some reason, feelings for Harry, then why isn't she more heartbroken when he dies horrifically in front of her? It wouldn't even have to be that much, just some sort of line or small exchange that shows that her character has reached a turning point, so that way she can maintain some sort of consistency. Not to mention that Lazarevich is handled kinda clumsily at the end of the game. They try to make him a sort of mirror of Nate's brutality, asking the question of whether he's justified in killing this many people. It's a great question to ask, however, this dichotomy really isn't introduced until the last 15 minutes of the game, so ultimately just feels cliché. This is a shame because Lazarevich is by far the best villain in the series. Naughty Dog seemed to follow a less is more mentality when writing Lazarevich. His raw aggression, disfigured appearance, and utter disregard for human life make it clear that he was a monster well before he ate magic amber. It's hardly the most original angle for a villain, but it's executed so flawlessly that you feel like you're seeing it for the first time whenever he comes on screen. He may feel at times a little one-note, but nonetheless, Lazarevich remains a uniquely intimidating threat to Nathan Drake for the entirety of the game. Unlike some other villains in the Uncharted series. There are so many other foils that I don't have time to discuss. How the language barrier between Tenzin and Nate forces him to focus less on being the funniest guy in the room and more on introspection. Or how Uncharted 3's Charlie Cutter finally gave Nate someone to nerd out with and represented Nate's more goofy side. Foils are an easy way to add depth to your story. This is doubly so if you happen to be writing a power fantasy or story with a strong focus on a central character. When it is used effectively, they can add nuance to a situation, prompting interesting reactions from your characters and driving the plot in interesting directions. However, when added as an afterthought, they can feel disingenuous or worse, cliché. Suffice it to say, I really like Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. It has a lot to say about its protagonist and about the series as a whole. It's by far the best of the original trilogy, and while sometimes the writing may falter or stumble, I really like the confidence that Naughty Dog conveyed with this game. Like the fact that they entirely sidelined Sully from the beginning, just giving him a sort of cameo appearance. It was a really wise choice, and it prevented him from overshadowing newer characters like Chloe. But let's be honest here. Uncharted isn't remembered for Harry Flynn. This is what Uncharted is remembered for. But how does Naughty Dog pull this off? Why are their set pieces so far above the rest of the industry? Well, for that, you're gonna have to tune in next week. Feel free to subscribe so that way you don't have to miss a single week of the month of Uncharted. Also, feel free to check out the previous videos in the series. I've made a video on Uncharted 1, as well as a video on the tutorial level of Uncharted 3, Another Round, and how it conveys its character through gameplay. Anyway, guys, feel free to have a wonderful day.